Hey, welcome everybody. Good evening. You are beautiful souls, and we are welcoming you to a special edition of the Soul Report Live. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell, and join me, as always, is my good friend and co producer, Jack Balick. And tonight we have special co host, Larry Cruz. That's right. It's open night mic tonight in a way that we're going to visit several of the things in the news and we're going to ask you to chime in. You can go into the chat, and tonight we have a brand new feature that you can click the links and hopefully it'll work. You'll be able to get on in person and talk to us and ask the questions just like we used to do when we had the Blog Talk radio show for about 20 years. Maybe you've had a powerful dream. Maybe you're wondering about the state of the world. Maybe something's in your heart that just needs a little light. Whatever it is, tonight it's your time to seek that out and ask. We have a live chat going, so remember, you can come and speak your truth. Even if we disagree with you, we're going to give you the opportunity, we're going to give you the platform to talk to the world and to say your piece. Although it has to be, polite and on target and, something meaningful to everyone. So, if you're new to the show, welcome to the Global Village. We're thrilled to find you that you found your way here. Be sure, subscribe now, follow and like the channel, and let us get ready to raise the soul frequency of the world together. So, take a breath, center yourself, and let's open the show with a wonderful evening. We're great to have you here. Everyone, you're listening throughout YouTube, wherever you are in the world, let us know. Drop us a line. We're here to find out more about you and what you need and how we can bring your light. Welcome to the show, Larry. It's great to have you here tonight. I trust you've had a great week.
Yes, I have, and I hope you have too.
So far, so good, but it seems to be one of those magic Mondays where everything is just going one step forward and two steps back. So we'll start off with something that's really hot. It's in the news, it's on TikTok, it's all over the world. It's been broadcast by some serious people about that amazing thing that's called the rapture. A South African pastor, Joshua Malekla, has publicly claimed that he received a vision from Jesus the Christ indicating that the rapture will occur on, get this, September the 23rd or the 24th, 2025. That's just a few days ago. However, these dates coincide with Rosh Hashanah, Feast of Trumpets, in the Jewish calendar. Now, I'm not too familiar with that, but for somebody to come out and speak worldwide, Larry, that they have a divine communication about the rapture, wow, that's pretty, brazen. And the guy, you could say he's either crazy or that Jesus spoke to him. The prophecy's gone on social media all over TikTok under the hashtag Rapture Talk. I'm just going to give that a shout out. And remember, I'm not associated with these fellows, so I don't really know or endorse them. Okay, so if you're going to check it out, please do, because this is a very important time, Larry. I mean, the rapture is something that people have been told that is coming. It started off in the 1800s, and theologians and the professionals, many Christian leaders caution against date setting. I do too, but you know, I'm still here. Okay, so you're still there, and everybody listening to our voice, we're still here. My friends, the rapture in a fundamental way was supposed to be the time when all the good souls, the believers, especially the Christian believers, would be called to heaven, and they would rise up, all the souls that were alive and the good Christians that were deceased, and they would go up into the clouds to be with Christ in heavens above. Well, I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened or is supposed to happen, but we're going to find out. You can look for biblical scripture. For example, Matthew chapter 20, verse 36 warns that no one knows the day or the hour, and that'll give a different slant on what the rapture is all about. Some commentary is also re-examining the traditional rapture paradigm itself. Questions are being raised about how much of what is popular belief comes from the 18th, 19th, and 20th century theology. Popular Christian fiction or culture interprets rather than it's an interpretation rather than an early Christian teaching. Before that time, before the 1800s, there wasn't much about this at all. So, reflecting the human cost of such beliefs, some former believers describe the psychological and emotional damage of living under constant prophecy pressure. Now, there's a term I haven't heard before. Maybe our producer Jack will write that one down. Under constant prophecy pressure. I'm a minister. I've been in the spiritual business all my life, apparently, as we all have, but for the last 50 years, I have gone on sojourns, I've made pilgrimages, I've gone and sought everywhere to find what is the truth. What is the orthodox believing of the one true God? And so I've come to many roads, I've come to many temples and churches, I've met many spiritual beings and people who are uh, earnest, I mean, sincere. After all, this life in the world is temporary, and the one next in the great post existence, which by the way is the same as the pre existence. You know, we came from heaven and now we're going back. It's the same place. It's got to be something that everybody's looking forward to in understanding all of their life. But there's a lot of pressure, and people are afraid, and we don't want them to be afraid. It's more like, telling a story, and the story essence becomes the meaning, and the meaning becomes the law, and then people are afraid to break the law, but they don't understand the story. So as we look at this in this point of time, it's a matter of saying the rapture, the fervor over it, is something that, you got to take this with a little common sense. You know, don't neglect paying your bills. Don't sell your house. Don't get down on your hands and knees every moment and pray and pray and pray that you're going to be one of the people ascending to the heavens above. All in good time. All in good time. I think this whole idea of the rapture refers to the Enlightenment. It refers to the Christ consciousness. It refers to the people being uplifted and coming to a point of spiritual understanding and illumination. And in that sense, that's a real thing. And as such, this time, the time we're in now, a time of chaos, is a time that we should all pay attention. Deceit and chaos and corruption are everywhere. But isn't that a time when light and illumination would come into the world? So as we move through the show, I'd like you to consider, as we get to the question and answer part in the next segment, or in the last segment of the show, that you consider, uh, chiming in and letting us know what you think of this time that is now becoming popular as the rapture, so we can have you, chime in with what you believe. We have a special guest tonight who likewise has been exploring myths all of his life. He's a well-known author. He is someone who has been a friend of mine for years. He's Harvard trained. He's a Master of Education degree from Harvard University. He's devoted his entire life to understanding and serving people in a very special way on the autism spectrum. I want to welcome to tonight Jonathan Alderson, as I said, a scholar, a practitioner, and change maker in the world of autism and human potential. Jonathan is also the author of Changing the Myths. I have a copy here. It's Exploring the Myths of Autism, sometimes called Challenging the Myths of Autism, which I have here in my script. And Jonathan will correct me as to which one is correct. And I want you to know this is a fantastic book. If you have someone in your family or you have a friend or neighbor that has some difficulties with autism, this is the man to see. He is one of the experts in understanding autism and providing ways and means to deal with it practically throughout the life of the child in particular. And I want to say he has done this from an amazing perspective. He's being hoisted to the top of his profession. He has sparked international and national discussions of exploring the misconceptions about autism, and is inviting us to look in a deeper, empathetic way for all the possibilities. Tonight, we're going to explore some of the dimensions of autism through Jonathan's knowledge and how society, faith, the soul, and science interact in the life of those on the spectrum. We'll ask not just what autism is, but who is the person is? Who is that mysterious person behind the mask of autism? Why myths persist and how we can learn to see through this hidden mist. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. I saw you there on the sidebar just a moment ago. Let the Wizard of Oz have Jonathan pop up here and we'll start our interview. Okay, this is called The Stretch. I'll remark again about how the Exploring the Myths of Autism is an amazing book. We're having a little technical difficulties, I assume, and so we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so we'll wait for our production problem to be solved here and for Jonathan to get back on. I saw him here just a moment ago. Here he is. No, yes, maybe, possibly. Okay. Larry, do you know anybody in your family who has autism?
No, I do not. But I do have friends that have children that
And
have autism.
how are they dealing with it?
Uh, well, uh, it's a lot of patience, but they're at times they struggle, and at times it's their understanding. It's a variety of emotions for this family I'm thinking about particularly.
Well, any person, any family that has a specially challenged child, um, everybody should pay attention to the parents whose life becomes instantly converted from a normal lifetime to now becoming an advocate for the child. You see, when you have a handicapped child, I'm not supposed to say that, supposed to say challenged child, but that's for my generation. Everybody is against you. What? Did he really say that? Yes. It seems like the world is against you. You have to be an advocate to get care for your special child. You have to deal with the caregivers. Some are nice and some are not. You have to deal with the caregiver managers who are always got one eye on the dollars if you have insurance or government assistance, and the other eye on uh, time of their employees that are servicing the families in need. So as it comes to a point of, oh my gosh, I'm in a whole world I never expected, you become an advocate because sometimes people don't want to give you the services because they just don't want to spend the money. And you meet people who are unbelievably, callous. On the other hand, you meet people who are amazing. They're angels in disguise. They are there to help and do the best they possibly can for your child. And these people are the ones that deserve a lot of credit. So having someone in your family or someone in your neighborhood, when you see a special child, go out of your way not just to help the child, but help the family. And one thing you should never, ever, ever say, my friends, is walk up to them, perfect strangers though you might be, and say, "What happened?" Because you see, the parents get asked that a gazillion times, and it hurts every single time. And why should they go through this story to tell you, a perfect stranger on the street? So be polite and participate. Help these parents, help these children by participating with practical ways and means. Giving money is one way, of course, but maybe the parents need somebody to babysit the child, or maybe they need their lawn cut, or maybe they need somebody to run for groceries. It's an important thing for us as spiritual believers practicing practical spirituality, practical Christianity, and or whatever religion you're in. To be a practical spiritual person means when you see something needs to be done, help. And whenever you find somebody who's down on their luck, somebody living on the street, when somebody crosses your path, that's an opportunity for you to express and demonstrate your spirituality and just how a good Samaritan you are. But again, people living with autism, it's very difficult. And Jonathan is a master because he has found the keys, he's found a way. That's why his book is exploring the myths of autism is such a profound title. Because when you hear the word autism, you really don't know what it means, but you sort of give up and you say, oh, the child has autism, and you dismiss it. Well, Jonathan has found a way or ways on how to communicate with children, how to get past the mask, how to get into the inner being, their personality. And I could tell you stories, but we're hoping that our technical glitches here get solved and Jonathan can join the show, as he is much more authoritative and understanding of what he has discovered. You see, autism isn't something like that's it, set in stone. Autism is a way children think. It's a personality that we can't understand. It's like they're inside, locked up in a body, and for some reason they don't communicate or think like we do. But they do think and they do live their lives. They're just a little different in the way that they are reacting with the world around them. In the more severe cases, they seem to be locked away in a shell in their body, but they're there, they're alive, and they're well. And Jonathan, again, has found a way to turn that key and get into the child and get the child practicing simple skills of living at first, and then to go on with finding out how to get past or around that corner, over that hill, past that block, and get the child pronouncing words, doing things, increasing their vocabulary, and living their life to the fullest. We're going to take a short break in a moment, and we hope we can get Jonathan back on the show. I guess we're having a teeny tiny bit of difficulty. I've seen him pop up in the sidebar here a couple of times, Larry. So, but have you seen children, or have you ever interaction with autistic children yourself, other than the people down the street?
No, no, I have not.
Have you ever wondered what it is?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
And
Well, it's just a question, but I've never seen a full interaction or anything like that.
yeah, well, that's usually the case. It is, Larry. Not to put you on the spot, but that
No,
was
of course.
exactly what I was going at. Is that we don't take the time. We say, "Oh, the child has autism." What does that mean? Well, if Jonathan would be here tonight on the air, which we hope we can get him on, just a minute, grab the computer, get Oz behind the curtain there to give the computer a shake and get this platform working. We'll hopefully get him on. So let's take a short break, and we'll be right back after this.
Are you searching for clarity, guidance, and peace of mind? For nearly 50 years, Douglas James Cottrell has used his intuitive abilities to help people from all walks of life overcome challenges and make informed choices. During his clairvoyant consultations, Douglas helps you uncover the root causes of life's challenges, whether in relationships, health, or finances. He offers insights into your future and practical guidance to empower your decisions today. Available by phone, Skype, Zoom, or FaceTime, Douglas's consultations fit your schedule and lifestyle. Heal, evolve, be the person you were born to be. Book your clairvoyant consultation today with Dr. Douglas James Cottrell.
And we're sorry that you're having some difficulty getting on. We'll try to
We've
call
got
you.
we've got Jonathan on the phone,
Oh,
Douglas.
there we go. We've got him now.
We,
Okay, well,
we're doing
Jonathan,
it low tech.
eh, when in doubt, use the telephone.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Jonathan. We're sorry that we've had some technical glitches here tonight, but I've done the introduction, and I was talking to my co-host Larry tonight about some of the myths of autism, and so as you join this show, please tell us a little bit about how you came to be such an authority in autism, and about your amazing book, Exploring the Myths of Autism.
Oh, hi, Douglas. Hi, Larry. Thank you for the invitation to have this conversation with you. And I'm sorry for the technical glitches, but here we are. Like you said, the old-fashioned phone calls never let you down. I guess I missed the first part of your conversation, but you've been talking about the myths of autism. Was there one that you were sort of talking about the most, or something that I could jump in on?
Yeah, we were talking just to bring the audience up to speed about autism. Larry is a young man with a family, and I asked him about autism and his experiences with it. And it was like everyone else, it's sort of like an awareness of autism, but not really um, any in-depth knowledge of it. And of course, as I said before, one becomes a parent of a special child, and you automatically become an advocate trying to get services and benefit to that child. So that's kind of where we are. And I had remarked about how some of the amazing accomplishments you have made, not in detail, but how you took it upon yourself to look at a sort of a holistic way of looking at autism, which is something was novel, and that you've risen to great heights in your profession because you've been able to explore the myths, but get by the mask of what autism is, to get into the mind of children with autism and have them live productive lives.
Mm. Well, thank you, Douglas, for setting that up for sure. And you mentioned the myths of autism, and you're right. I wrote a book, but we just go back a little bit. Let me just share with your listeners how that came about, because I think it tells an interesting story of what parents face, actually. So many years ago, I live in Canada, but at the time when I became interested in helping children, in particular, I just finished an undergraduate degree and also published some research on brain development, and I was interested at the time in how do children learn. But in particular, I published a paper on thing called super learning back in the day, in the 1970s, that super learning was first sort of talked about. And it was basically figuring out how could we accelerate learning, both in how much you could learn and how long you could retain it. But in any case, that's kind of where I started in looking at the brain. I became interested in autism when I went down to Massachusetts to a center there, the Sunrise Program. At the time it was called, now it's called the Autism Center for America. And while I was there, I had the chance to join a training program where I worked directly one-on-one with autistic children from around the world, all over the world, from Australia, from Mexico, from the Middle East. I traveled to Saudi Arabia. I went to England, Ireland, Spain, Holland, all around and all across the States and Canada. And that afforded me the ability to see a whole range of autism, because of course these children are incredibly diverse. There's a big range from low functioning, high functioning, verbal, nonverbal, highly intelligent, struggling with intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. But what happened, Douglas and Larry, is as I was working directly with the children, I was also, and I always have been interested in research and science, and so I was going to a lot of conferences. I was very fortunate to be in the area about a couple hours from Boston, where, there's MIT and Harvard and Boston University, but also from New York. I was a couple hours from New York, so lots of conferences there in New Jersey. And what would happen is I would go to these conferences and I'd hear these scientists and doctors, and researchers, and they would say things about autistic children that were diametrically opposed to what I was seeing live. And I'll give you an example. I remember sitting in one conference, and the researcher, very respectable, and someone who's well respected and regarded, was talking about the fact, he said, that autistic children don't have imagination, that they can't do imaginative pretend play. And he sat there in about the 10th row, and I was thinking, is he talking about the same kids that I work with? Because I worked with a couple of hundred at that point, and they all seemed to be incredibly creative and imaginative, and in fact, so much so that oftentimes they were sort of in their own thoughts, if you will, with sort of their own dreams and images. And so I went back and I started reading and looking up some of the citations that this doctor gave. And in fact, there was a literature about the lack of imagination of autistic people. Well, in any case, I started writing down on old recipe cards, these little cards that, your grandma used to use to write down her bread recipe. I got a package of those, and I did it so that any time I saw and witnessed live with a child an example that contradicted these statements that these researchers were saying, I'd write it down. Like real live proof. And about 5-6 years later, I had a whole stack of all of these wonderful examples about intelligence and imagination and all these different things. And I had also been collecting the research around the myths. And that's when I decided, someone needs to write a book about what is you sort of see live versus what these researchers are promoting. And so I wrote the book, Challenging the Myths of Autism. And I don't want to carry on too much here, but I will say that what was so interesting, each chapter, what I did, so there's 7 myths that I talk about. And in each chapter, I start, first of all, with giving the history of how did the myth come about. Because, of course, your listeners must be wondering, well, Jonathan, how could all these researchers be so wrong, and these doctors, aren't they seeing the same kids you are? Well, it's so fascinating, how each myth came about was oftentimes a conversation one researcher had with another, or a published paper that wasn't checked, edited well, and these myths literally kind of creeped into our literature. Fascinating. And they need to be changed. That's why we got to challenge them, because they're incredibly limited. Right? Parents read this stuff and they buy into it. Teachers read it, they buy into it, and it really taints the way we see these wonderful people.
Well, the traditional, view was drawn from medical, psychological, and educational perspectives. Again, passed on from one to another. Difficulties with social communication interaction, restricted repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities, a wide range of symptoms that were severely affixed to individuals who were nonverbal. And so, as you say, people were just passing along what was given. It wasn't the real truth. But as I've mentioned earlier, before you were on, that parents are the real people who need guidance and help, because they see the child, and the child is the child is their best patient. They understand the child, and they can see these signs of intelligence and activities. And I never heard you tell me that before, that you did this wide note taking, if I can call it that, of these behavioral improvements in children, because there's always intelligence there, and you had the wherewithal to take it down, and I guess you had evidence where other people had theory. So, that was amazing. But to be patient and to be so caring and kind to do that. The next step is, when you wrote this book and put it forward, I'm sure it must have perked up a lot of ears, and maybe you had some resistance about this nouveau way of looking at autism through your eyes and through the experiences you've had, but you had the evidence. And I guess you must have had some really wonderful ways and means to help the parents unlock the children from this prison. I'm going to call it a prison of autism, maybe this frame of mind. Can you tell us something about how you got from collecting this information to writing the book and helping people? I know you help people all over the world. You're world renowned and for your success with autistic children. Give us an idea of how you made that step, that jump.
Right. Thank you, Douglas. Well, let me, I'll make the bridge with just this one little anecdote, okay? While I was researching the book, one of the myths that I look at, I called the myth of the 5-year myth, or the myth of the 5-year window. And this is actually an idea that many, many parents who have special needs children, not just autism, hear. And it's the idea that we really have this window between 0 age up to 5 years old, when the brain is super fertile, lots of dendrites. That means there's lots of nerve endings that can learn lots of stuff. And the idea is that after 5 years old, that these dendrites, there's not as many of them, that there's a process actually in the brain, and this is all true and scientific. There's a process called pruning that the brain does. It's called pruning because it's like you went out to your tree or a bush and you just cut off a bunch of branches that were in the way or dead or not being used. So your brain prunes itself from unused circuits, if you will.
Wow.
So the idea here is parents are told, hey, listen, you really got about 5 years to help your autistic child learn how to talk or draw a circle or count, or learn how to put on their running shoes. And then after that, learning slows down. And this idea, and again, it is true that pruning happens, but this idea is actually, the science is what led to governments around the world to fund early intervention. And that's where all of our funding goes, between children who are, infants right up to sort of 3 or 4 years old. And this is good. This is very, very good. But here's what's not good, Douglas. And that is the idea that somehow after the age of 5, that it's all downhill from here.
Right, right.
I don't know about you, but I'll tell you, I've learned almost everything that I know in life after the age of 5.
I would agree with that. And you keep on learning every day. Yeah.
Of course, right? But I'll tell you, and I'm just doing the jump here to talk about my approach. But while I was researching this book, and I tell this story in Challenging the Myths of Autism, I came across sort of a mom blog and a chat group. And so I was just reading some of the posts. And on this one evening that I was researching, I read this post that made me cry. I had tears. And I read it, and it was a mom who was reaching out to this other mom support group, and she was saying, tonight is my son's 5th birthday, and my autistic son's 5th birthday, and I'm sitting at home, and she said, and I'm angry at myself, and I'm depressed, and I feel that I've let him down because he still doesn't talk, and I've tried everything I can, but it's his 5th birthday, and I've let him down. And can you imagine? So this is a mom who has bought into the idea that she only had 5 years to help him and then it's done. And she was feeling so sad and depressed, and I wanted to just jump through that chat group and sort of grab her and look at her in the eyes and say, listen, there's lots of hope. There's lots of time. There's lots of things that you can do. Don't give up and don't buy this myth. And I tell this story and what happened in the book. So one of the very first strategies, if you want to call it a strategy, Douglas, that I approach helping a family with is to look at actually what you could call their attitude about autism. And when I say attitude, I mean, what are the beliefs that they hold? How do they imagine it? How do they think about it? Do they believe the child is going to learn after 5? Do they believe the child is creative and imaginative and can do pretend play? Or do they believe that they only have 5 years and will probably never do pretend play? So we actually do an inventory of the parents' attitude and how they feel. And one of the things I help them with is to adopt a whole new perspective that is hopeful and optimistic and not false, not a false hope. I'm not selling false hope, but that's actually based on science and real children that I've worked with. So reframing your attitude, just like an athlete, if you will, right? Athletes that are in the Olympics, they actually have, psychologists, sports psychologists who will they're training their bodies to maybe run a fast race, but they also have a sports psychologist who trains their thinking to also win the race. And so that's the first place I start, is to train the parents' thinking so that they can have hope and have a lot of success moving forward.
Well, there must be a whole learning curve for the traditional therapists who basically shut down as well and saying, well, they're only 5, or that's as much as we can do. I had that experience in my own family where someone said, well, the child is 18 and the government assistant quits. And you go, well, yeah, but the child still needs to go to school and needs things. I say, well, not much we can do. They normally don't live much longer. And that was somebody actually said that cruel statement in my presence. Pardon me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Douglas, that you went through that, and that I'm sorry you reacted to that. In some ways, cruel thing to say to a parent. There's a balance. Professionals want to not give false hope, and professionals want to have real conversations. But I think that there's so much what I call mythologies and limiting ideas and beliefs that don't really stand up to reality. That there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot. I haven't met a professional yet, Douglas, in 30 years of working, that doesn't have, some good intention to help the family and help the children. They're coming from a good place. I don't want to sound negative towards my colleagues. They're doing good things. That professor who is standing up on the stage and talking about autistic children don't have imaginations, can't do pretend play. He wasn't there trying to put them down. He just had misinformation. So what one of my ambitions is to re-educate or educate my colleagues and parents with a different view. And I'm sorry that you went through back in the day some of those limiting and negative beliefs.
Well, you have hands-on experience, Jonathan. You're right there on the floor, dealing with the children, looking them in the eye, and you've been very astute at finding ways and means to, get into the mind of that child. I thought that was fascinating how you said about the synapse and the other, the pruning that takes place in the brain. I never quite thought of it that way, but I know that if the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, weightlifters and whatnot. So that makes perfect sense. There was back in the day, there was a practice called patterning, which was to take a child and go through the motions, even though the child was incapable of it on its own accord, but to go through the motions of crawling or swimming. And so the child would relearn the steps and regain the mobility in its own life, and it would walk. The child would walk again and crawl, and the brain would be stimulated. So that's a little bit of a side issue, but it was along the same lines of retraining the brain. I think they do that with people who have strokes and things like that. They have this patterning process. So this idea of the brain rusting away after 5 years, there's not much going on. I find that extremely, well, I'm not going to use any derogatory words, but it's kind of like you know what it is. It's the people standing up on the stage. They don't really deal with the people on the floor. They don't deal with the children. They have no hands-on experience like yourself. So
Well, I think the ideal is to blend both of those, and I remember patterning, and I think it was, again, there's some researchers and people with good hearts that are saying, well, we need to train the brain. And that's true. And so the idea worked in practice. Patterning was often done against children's will. I remember seeing a video of a child who was being patterned to crawl because the child couldn't do a cross-crawl movement. So if you think about a little baby, how they crawl across the floor, and your left knee goes first, and then your right hand goes next, and then your right knee, and then your left hand, and alternates. It's called cross-crawling. And some children don't seem to be able to do this, and so you might pattern a child by literally having 2 to 4 adults, one on each limb, to help the child do this, which can be lovely and nice and caring, but not if the child doesn't want it. This video, kid who couldn't wait to get out of there and stand up and didn't want to do this at all. By the way, the child could walk. That you just hadn't gone through the cross-crawl stage of learning, and these therapists believe that you must absolutely go through the cross-crawl phase, whether you skipped it or whatever. So I think in practice, it's not always done well.
Wow.
But just as for your listeners, as a little brain candy, a little fun thing. When I was researching, just going back for a second to the pruning and the 5-year window, one of the things I share in the book, in this chapter, is this research that had come out fairly recently at the time when I wrote the book, but a research at the National Institute of Mental Health in the States, the NIH, people might have heard of that, a doctor named Dr. Jay Geed, and he actually, game-changing, sort of pioneering research, he was able to identify, Doug, that there's a second wave of dendritic growth, of brain growth. There's a second wave right around adolescence. He identified it between 10 and 13 years of age, and then there's a second pruning, actually. And this was they found this in the 2000s, so this is pretty new research. And we didn't know this before, so we knew that there's lots of dendrites when you're born, and they kind of get pruned. What we didn't know is there's this another sort of burst of growth, and then a second pruning just in early adolescence. So I wrote in the book, I said, based on that, government should fund early intervention, and then they should fund the early teen intervention.
Yeah.
Science that supports your brain's ripe at both of those times. But that's the kind of really interesting stuff that if you look at science and you look at what's really going on the ground, you can come up with some great policies and help a lot of kids.
Well, the most important thing for parents is when, get to those stages of potty training, communication, I'm hungry, the simple things in life, I'm sick, I don't feel well. And I think I remember you talking once about how you've come up with some remedies and also how difficult it is to get teachers and the extended helpers to actually go along and keep the, what can we call it, the pattern going with the child, I guess the child's way of thinking or acting in life.
Well, you asked a little bit earlier, Doug, about my approach that I've evolved over the last 20 years, and it's what I call integrative multi-treatment approach, or integrative multi-treatment intervention, IMTI. And as it says right in the title, it's multi-treatment. So just briefly for your listeners who may know a little bit about autism, some of you listening will know a lot about this, but in the field of autism, if you look at an individual with autism, there's many different things that they might be challenged with or struggling with. It could be communication. It could be a gross motor movement. You're talking about coordination earlier in the cross crawl. It could be sensory integration, how they experience their senses. Maybe they might feel that a cotton shirt that most of us are comfortable in might feel scratchy to their skin. So there could be a whole range from language to movement to sensory and many, many other things. And therefore, when you're attempting to help a child, an educated child, and help a child thrive and develop with autism, you really have to draw from many different types of approaches and strategies. Okay, you have to sort of pull from a wide range of things. But what happens is our field has specialists that are sort of in their silos. You have the behaviorists, they're in their sort of column, if you will, and you have speech therapists and they're doing their thing, and you have occupational therapists and they're doing their thing. And we need that specialty. But what a parent faces is, so what's going to work for my individual child? How do I know what kind of recipe, if you will, it's a weird word to use, but a treatment map that's going to work for my child? How do I know which one of these things? Because every child is completely unique. So what I started over 20 years ago was trying to develop a method where we could look at a child's individual profile. This child who may have wonderful motor coordination, so they don't need sort of occupational therapy, but they might be really, really challenged with language, so let's get them that. So looking at an individual child's profile and creating a treatment map, creating a road map, helping the parents decide which should we do and what shouldn't we do, and in what order, and in what timing. So that's integrated multi-treatment approach. Doing it for years. It includes biomedical. And that's what you were just talking about a minute ago when you said remedies, Douglas. We also look at the child's physical health. So we look at their digestion. We look at their methylation. So that's getting rid of toxins. We look at their mitochondria. So we look at their energy. We look at their sleep patterns, all of the biomedical. And that becomes a part of their profile that we try and address and help them with.
Hey,
So
Jonathan, we have a question from Carrie on YouTube, and the question is, how does neuroplasty affect the brain of a child with autism?
Well, yeah, sure. Just for everyone, thank you for the question, Carrie. So neuroplasticity is really a concept that the brain is able to learn. Literally, that's what it means. It means that the brain can learn, and it can learn new things, so that we're neuroplastic. That means that we're not set in stone. You know, although some of my friends when I was a kid would call me a rockhead sometimes when I did the wrong thing, the fact is my head isn't a rock, that it's plastic, that it can learn, it can grow through neurology. So, and that's true for all of us, and it's also true for autistic individuals. So autistic individuals are able to learn, that they have a neuroplasticity as well. That's really the short answer there. And I think, Carrie, you know, what I would add is, I'll add, again, talking about the myths, is it's actually good news. Neuroplasticity, the idea, the theories and the science behind neuroplasticity is good news for parents, because it gives them hope to say, wow, you know what? The brain can change and grow. Let me just give you, though, Carrie, one little insight, which I think is interesting, which is where neuroplasticity and the science behind it really developed strongly was in the area of stroke research. Okay, so adults primarily who would have a stroke, and they would, you know, maybe lose some functioning because some part of their brain had a stroke. And what researchers were able to show is that specialist cells, they're called glial cells. So there's specialist language cells, and there's specialist motor cells. That means movement cells that control our movement. And there's specialist vision cells, for example. These are called glial cells in the brain. And this is fascinating. Listen to this. This is so interesting. Researchers showed that glial cells can migrate from one part of the brain to another. So if one part of your brain was injured, let's say for language, that if there was some glial cells, specialist language cells left, that they can literally travel, they migrate to a healthy part of the brain where they can regrow and colonize. And if you had enough input, that means therapy, rehabilitation, that you could potentially regain some language. And there's some famous stories. And again, I write about this in my book. I tell some stories of this. But this is a great example of the neuroplasticity of the brain, that we're not set in stone, that it can evolve and grow. The brain is fascinating, absolutely fascinating in its ability to rehabilitate. In some cases, sadly, it doesn't do that so well. But the point of this story is keep trying with rehabilitation, keep going, because the brain does have an ability to some degree to regrow and learn.
You know, Jonathan, that is something I did not know. But that makes perfect sense. The brain, I guess that's for anybody that has damage in the brain, this process would continue as well.
Well, yeah, it does require. Science is saying that it requires that input, meaning an occupational therapist or a speech therapist, a physical therapist, to be there encouraging that individual to say, try and lift your leg, or try and stick your tongue out, or try and touch your nose, so encouraging them, the patient to do and move beyond their limitations. And with that encouragement, in some cases, and the person's will, of course, is always the will of the individual, that the brain could begin to find the connections it needs to literally grow the circuits.
This is amazing, absolutely amazing. Where can people get your book, Jonathan?
Doug, my book, Challenging the Myths of Autism, is really available anywhere that you get your books. So, Amazon is, I think, the company that started as a bookstore and is now is something a lot more, but you can get it on Amazon. In Canada, Indigo stores, and Canadians will know the Indigo book chain. In the States, Barnes & Noble can order it and get it. You often have to order it. And for those of you who have sort of Kobo readers or e-readers, my book is available in those ways, and you can get a hard copy or you can get the digital copy.
Okay. Well, let's take a short break. Just how can people get a hold of you, Jonathan? You have a website, and what's your company name? Or are you looking for people to help still as a therapist yourself or your company?
Yeah, Douglas, thanks. I'll just be very brief. We've talked a lot about challenging the myths of autism in the book, but I've actually wrapped up and just sort of taken a bit of a sabbatical from working directly with individual families to create an online platform so that I could reach many, many, many more families, thousands, I'm hoping, to help kids. It's called Thrive Guide, like to thrive, THRIVE, and then one word, guide, to guide you through thriving.co, so thriveguide.co. And that is a platform that parents and educators who are, raising autistic children can go. And I'll just say in a sentence here, basically they enter a profile, they answer questions so that we get a sense of the child, a pretty deep sense. And then I've been working for the last 2 years on an algorithm that creates a treatment map, exactly what I was explaining to you I've been doing for years, which is taking a child's individual profile and being able to point the parents in the direction to say, here's the 5 best next steps that you can take. I think it's a no-brainer. I think any parent or teacher raising a child and helping them with autism would go there to thriveguide.co and want to get these insights that are put together from autism specialists, including myself, that are really highly individualized. Just incredible tool.
I think that's amazing, Jonathan. You give people hope. I mean, when the door seems to be slamming closed, especially with the treatment, when you're 5 years old, your life is over, to now, these advances. I'm going to have to ask you about, is AI helping it at all? But these advances that are taking children from having, being stigmatized and therefore abandoned, to the point where you have developed a company that can ask questions and profile children and give the parents hope. I mean, there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that's more hopeful than having parents who would rather give up their life and give their life to their child if a cure or a remedy could be given to them. I mean, that's how desperate to parents come for their children. And what I've listening today, and I hope the audience is appreciating just the effort that you've made, Herculean effort, but very clever, very wise in your approach, and no wonder you've had great success in the way you have. I'm going to ask the producer if we have any more questions before we go to break. And if we do in the chat, Oz, do you have any questions for Jonathan?
Yeah, oh yeah, people have a lot of questions.
Well,
Uh,
in that case, let's take a break and we'll come back and ask those questions. We'll be
all
right
right,
back after this.
that's good. All right. Sorry.
Are you searching for clarity, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of the spiritual world around you? Meet Douglas James Cottrell, PhD, a visionary author and teacher who's helped countless people transform their lives. His books are a gateway to profound insights, offering guidance, inspiration, and the tools you need to unlock your full potential. From unlocking your intuition to discovering spiritual truths, Douglas's books are your trusted companions on the path to personal growth. Don't wait, start your journey today. Visit his website douglasjamescottrell.com to explore and purchase his life-changing work. Your next breakthrough is just a page away.
All right. Jonathan, we got another question for you. You probably knew this one was coming. It's from a viewer on YouTube, Noyk. His question is the latest flap about Tylenol a real cause or just a diversionary tactic?
Sure, I'm happy to give some opinions on that. With these caveats, I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a scientific researcher in a lab, and I'm certainly not a specialist on the connection between Tylenol and autism. So with that said, to cover me,
Yeah.
happy to give just a couple of ideas. So just really quickly, there is zero good scientific research that has been done that would show that taking Tylenol as a mom, causes autism. There is zero. I've read the literature, I've read the research. Of course, I'm looking at it as much as I can. So there's no research that shows that. If you were to talk with RFK, who is obviously Donald Trump's health guy, looking at this and asked him to show you papers that actually connected, he wouldn't be able to produce any. So that's what I'll just say right up front. Now, listeners will say, well, how the heck, well, they said it, and how the heck would he say that if there wasn't evidence? And let me go into part two here. Part two is that researchers have been looking at the effects of acetaminophen, which is the medication in Tylenol, for years, and any effects that it might have on developing fetus. And by the way, the drug company who puts out Tylenol has been doing this as well as the NIH, the National Institute of Health, and other agencies, right, for safety. And so what they have shown is that acetaminophen can be toxic in some ways to the human body, and I'm using toxic in quotes because you have to unpack what that means. Certainly not suggesting that it would lead to autism, but can be toxic in some ways. So I'll sort of leave it there on that. But for those listeners, and the listener asked the question, who are interested in exploring more, I'll point them in one direction, and that is if you start reading about effects of acetaminophen on the human body and how it's metabolized. That means how is it digested and used chemically in the body, and you'll come across sort of a part on the human gene called MTHFR. I'll say it again, MTHFR. This is just a part of the human genome that we all have, although some of us might have it, and it might be sort of changed because our genetic code can change from parents to child and so on and so forth for all sorts of different reasons. There's deletions, there's SNPs, there's variants. But MTHFR is responsible for methylation. Okay, and I won't get much more scientific in this, but methylation is a way that our body gets rid of toxins. It's a way that we absorb nutrients. Methylation does a lot of things in the body. It's very important. And acetaminophen interacts with the methylation cycle. And why this is important and interesting is because methylation and the MTHFR is a place on the human genome that some individuals with autism don't have functioning well. Okay, so that brings us right to the last sort of idea, which is it may be possible that some individuals, some fetuses, or some others who have a certain genetic makeup may not metabolize acetaminophen as well as others, or they may become a toxic load, and that might have an effect in some way, shape, or form on their bodies or the fetus. However, there is zero science and research that would show that yet, and this is all theoretical, what I'm telling you tonight. It's science, but it's the steps connecting them are theoretical. And so the bottom line is Tylenol or acetaminophen does have a place in reducing fevers and reducing inflammation in some cases. And so if a mother needs to take it, has been advised by a doctor to take it, to do that, in many cases that will be safer to reduce inflammation and fever and this kind of stuff than it would be to avoid it. So I'll say that, one thing that was a little bit crazy in Donald Trump's speech, and I'm not for or against that, but just, he said, mothers don't take Tylenol, and then he said, and don't give it to your kids. And yet the whole theory that RFK is putting out is that it somehow causes autism when mothers take it when the fetus is in. So in other words, how would that relate to once you're born? That, what does acetaminophen do? So it's just, there's a lot of crazy ideas that they were putting out, really.
Yeah. Hey, one thing I want to make the viewers know is that I believe you're a Canadian citizen. Is that correct?
You mentioned that already, Jack.
Oh, did you? Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe remind them. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
That's right. I'm not, if it's important, I don't have a vote in the American system, so I'm not for or against in that sense. I'm just talking objectively at science.
Yeah.
That was a good point, Jack, actually. So the point is that there's so much misinformation about health. Jonathan, the idea that the people that suffer the most are the most vulnerable people in society. And I can't fathom my mind where the idea of Tylenol would have such an ill effect, other than there might be some other reason that will come out in the future. But I think you eloquently put forward about from a position, as you said, that that still people shouldn't be afraid, right? I mean, this doesn't make sense at this point in time based on the scientific studies.
Right. I think you want to work with a medical doctor who's following your body, your physiology, your needs, and who's specialist, if you're pregnant, is specialist in pregnancy and giving a healthy birth. I think you always want to read your own research, and that research should, if it can be randomized, controlled trial, double blind, and so on and so forth, and published in a reputable journal. So I think, that this is how you want to approach health, the idea of everything in moderation, and so on and so forth. But the idea of that Tylenol causes autism is not one that's been accepted at this time, even though it's being touted. I think that the listener on YouTube and the question setter, is it just a diversion tactic or ruse? I don't know about that. I can't comment on the reasons for Donald Trump and RFK to say what they're saying, but who knows why they're doing it. But I think the important thing, as Douglas, you're saying, is this should not be scaring parents.
Yeah, life is scary enough, So, Oz, do we have a couple more questions before Jonathan goes?
Yep, we got two more. They're about ASD. I'm not sure what ASD. I hope you know. But the two questions are, what do parents need to be aware of? What signs do parents need to be aware of for ASD? And what's the best education system for those with ASD? And those are both from Carrie.
Right. Okay. Gary has some great questions. Carrie, just really briefly, so for all the listeners, ASD is the acronym for Autism Spectrum Disorder. So when I first began in the field, for whatever it's worth, it used to be called autism disorder, just AD. And a number of years later, the psychologists and psychiatrists really all agreed, you know what, there's a spectrum. There's a wide range, right, of neurodiversity that would be all-encompassing. And so they retitled it Autism Spectrum Disorder. That's all that means. In terms of signs that you'd be looking for, thanks for the question. I would direct you to one of 100 websites where you could get that information in a real clinical way. But you might start with your local autism chapter, or ChatGPT will tell you. It does change. The sort of diagnostic criteria just change about every 5 years or so in some little ways. But basically, the 2 or 3 sort of categories that you're looking for, Carrie, that would sort of raise a red flag. One is around social communication. So individuals who are diagnosed with autism, who are autistic, some of them can communicate very well. Some of them don't communicate at all vocally or verbally in the ways that we know, but might be able to communicate in other ways through typing and nonverbal communication, pointing, and this kind of stuff. I've worked with children who have all sorts of ways to communicate beyond just vocalizing. But one of the common challenges between all of them is that social communication is a challenge. And I'll just give you a quick example. I'm working with a little boy right now here in Ontario in Canada. He's 7 years old, and he doesn't always understand that you might have different thoughts than he has in his head. And that you might think, well, how is that possible? But it's called theory of mind. There's a whole theory out there called TOM, theory of mind. It's been written about quite broadly by a professor at Cambridge University in England, named Simon Baron-Cohen. In any case, I'll keep this short, but basically, autistic individuals sometimes don't understand that you have different thoughts, and so that leads to a different kind of challenge of communication. The second category, just briefly here, is repetitious and ritualized behaviors. Douglas mentioned that in the intro earlier, that they might do repetitive behaviors like lining up toys all in a row over and over and over. They may need to hit a light switch a certain number of times. So repetitious ritualized behaviors really is a hallmark of autistic individuals. I remember working with a little girl who, if her mother went a different way to take her to school, if she took a different road, this child would absolutely, completely melt down, would totally lose it. High-pitched screams that could break a glass. And sometimes the mother didn't have a choice because there might be road construction, and so she'd have to endure 5 or 10 minutes of, a child who is really, really dysregulated emotionally and very upset that her mother turned left instead of right. That's beholden to a repetitious ritual that the child had to do. And then thirdly, I would say, recently doctors and psychologists have said that one of the symptoms that is fairly common is the sensory integration issues that individuals with autism, struggle with sensory integration. Oh, and just the last little bit, Carrie said, what are the best treatments? I'll just answer it very briefly in the context of what I said earlier about my approach, which is integrative multi-treatment intervention. So, Carrie, I think one of the issues in the field of autism is that both professionals and parents are trying to find the treatment. And I would suggest that there isn't a individual single gold standard number one treatment that should be done for all children with autism. Why? Because they're all different and unique, right? I think similar to teaching children math, there's not one way that every individual on the entire planet should be taught math. Some kids learn by moving bricks and sort of manually holding bits and pieces when you add and subtract, and other kids need to visually see a picture, and some kids sing a song about addition and subtraction, and other kids do with a pencil and paper. So is there one treatment? No. There is a leading treatment that's most common called applied behavioral analysis, ABA. That's really the one that's sponsored the most by governments around the world and school boards. Again, my theory is it's good for some, but not for all kids, and it depends on when in their development and what they need and so on and so forth. So my tip for parents listening tonight is get to know your individual child's needs and really, really believe that there's a treatment map or roadmap that will suit your individual child. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing.
Makes sense. Makes good sense.
Excellent. Well, just two last things. I think they're just one from Carrie. She says, your organization will be so helpful for many families as well as practitioners in the school system and the educational field. And another comment from Shelley Smith on Facebook. She says, enjoying this, very informative. So just a little feedback for everyone.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you very much for being on the show tonight, Jonathan. Again,
Yes,
people
thank you.
can get the title of your book and where people can get it. I think you said it's available everywhere, which it ought to be. So a little bit about your title and I guess, yeah, well, go ahead.
The book, Challenging the Myths of Autism. The author's name is Jonathan Alderson is my last name, Alderson. And again, you could get that really, really anywhere these days. And then for parents listening and educators, if you're interested in finding out what my recommendations would be for your unique child, then you would go to thriveguide.co, and you can log in there, create an account. It's totally affordable. In fact, we wanted to make it so that it was less than the cost of one speech therapy session. So we think it's a great value, and you can go in there and you'll get immediately 5 recommendations that match your child's profile, and lots of other resources. By the way, Douglas, sorry, I'll just add this one thing for parents because it's free. I do have a weekly email, and you can get that at thriveguide.co. You can sign up for it. It's absolutely free, and we're not selling anything. You're not marketed to, but you get it. It's called a weekly AIM, which stands for Attitude, Intention, and Motivation, and it's just a little audio. Sometimes there's a video for 5-6 minutes, and it'll give you a parenting tip. It'll give you an education tip, a mindfulness tip, and they're great fun. So you could go and sign up for that if you like to.
Well, that's fantastic. Always being of service, Jonathan. You know, you're an amazing person. You're an amazing healer, and it's amazing that the world has you at this point in time. That's all I can say. I won't, I want
Generous
to.
words. Thank you, Douglas. I feel the same about the way that you've helped people as well. But thank you very much for having me on the program and giving me this chance to share some good news. And I do hope that it's helped at least 1 or 2 parents out there this evening.
I am sure it has. I am sure it has. I want to extend my deepest thanks to you for joining us tonight on the show. Your insights, your heart, and your dedication to shifting the way we see autism have truly made this a remarkable conversation. As a Harvard-educated educator, author of, again, Challenging the Minds of Autism, Challenging the Myths of Autism, there goes my dyslexia, and a true advocate for dignity and potential, you've helped illuminate why so many in the world are longing to understand, not just about autism, but about humanity. You've reminded us tonight that every diagnosis is important, but it's the soul, and behind every diagnosis, the challenge and a calling. We want to thank you for your wisdom and your warmth tonight and the wonderful work you're doing in the world. I'm sure you've helped many tonight, and as this show will be on YouTube forever, may many, many people be further aided in the future. Thank you very much, Jonathan. You've touched our hearts tonight and opened the minds of our audience. And I want to ask everyone, be sure to follow Jonathan's work and share this conversation with someone you might bump into or know who truly needs to hear the wisdom of what Jonathan has come up. Thank you again, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll have you on again sometime in the future. Godspeed. May peace and prosperity and much success be with you always.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you.
You're very welcome. We're going to take a short break, my friends, and we'll be back with the wind up of the show right after this. Well, hello everyone. We're back for the last segment of the show. We want to thank Jonathan for being on the show tonight again, and
You're on mute,
everybody.
Douglas, I
Everybody,
think. Can't hear you.
say again. Am I okay? Can you hear me?
Maybe-
Okay.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming John has left the show, and again, thanking him for being on the show tonight. The last segment of the show, my friends, is in the news. And Larry, we find that tomorrow there's a big meeting with all the heads of the military in the good old Washington, US of A. I'm kind of scary. I feel a little apprehensive about this. What do you think about that?
I'm sure this has happened before, what you're feeling. And also, I do recall there was also a big meeting during 9/11 and maybe other major events. Aren't they usually messy? Like having a bunch of military officials all in one place? Are they
It's
coordinated or not?
it's very risky. It's very
Yeah.
risky. I mean, the say the short-sightedness of military planners to have all the top brass, if you will, in the U.S. military all gathered in one place at one time, which has been forecast, which has been, announced. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stoic military leaders there tomorrow going to roll their eyeballs when they arrive, obeying orders. Yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. They're going to be there. 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, 5 star generals are going to be there. And the huge entourage, they'll have their security details with them. I've heard one report tonight, this is going to cost millions and millions of dollars. Now, for those people who are wondering, but this is first, the Secretary has called this, which I don't think it's ever been done before in American history. And now the president is going to join this meeting for whatever purposes it's supposed to be. I think there's a little shadow cast over this, but whatever's going to happen, and I'm not going to be there. I'm not a military man, and I'm not, I'm a Canadian myself, so I'm not taking sides for everybody to understand that. The point is that I'm apprehensive about it because this is something that's it's dangerous. It's not wise, in my intuitive, humble opinion, and that the secretary has called this, and now with the president having the tenacity, or should I say not the tenacity, I should say the reputation that when he starts to talk, he does get a little long-winded from time to time. So A meeting that could be otherwise done in secret over military communication channels is now going to be in the open, and there's going to be a lot of people put at risk. Now, I don't feel really bad about it, but I did have a dream, and I'm reminding people I had a vision in which there were a lot of military people that suffered from a bomb blast. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, and I'm not trying to put a spin on this, but I'm just saying that tomorrow would be a perfect opportunity for some mischief to happen, especially in today's world. You know, the Pentagon calls this rare meeting, and the usual meeting would involve approximately 800 generals and admirals who were based throughout the United States and stations overseas. Well, tomorrow, the Defense Secretary has ordered the military leaders to address hundreds of military leaders on Tuesday, and I just think this is, something that we ought to pay really close attention to. And so if we do that, and we also pray a little bit that, things are going to go well. It's in the news. It's something that's unusual. It's going to have consequences, and I'm feeling a little apprehensive about it. That's what we're talking about tonight. If you have any comments, we have a few minutes left in the show. If you'd like to make a comment about what you think about tomorrow's unique, rare meeting with all the top brass in one place, now's your time to call us up. It's going to happen in Virginia, I understand, and the generals are maybe there's going to be some things said that are going to be quite surprising. Again, I'm not trying to be cryptic or mysterious. I'm just trying to say, have you got any opinion out there? What's your thoughts out there, my friends? Oz, do we have any in the chat? Larry, do you see anybody in the chat having comments?
Not yet.
Okay. Back in the day when the Blog Talk radio show, we used to have reports of black op helicopters going over top of people's houses, and that used to scare the heck out of people. We had reports on what do they call them? Above unidentified objects flying around now. They used to be called UFOs before. So I would be curious, just on a whim now, that if there aren't going to be mysterious reports of such flying objects going through the air that aren't actually grounded in the world, they're going to be like maybe off-world vehicles. I'm just throwing that out as a teaser, my friend. I'm not trying to be foolish. Maybe I'm a little tired tonight, but let's pay close attention to what's going on tomorrow, because the administration's only been in office for 9 months, 10 months now, and amazing things have happened. So it's in the news tomorrow. Pay close attention to it. And also, I want to say what happened to the Church of Latter-day Saints in Michigan breaks my heart. I am so sorry that this has happened once again, but I also want to remind everybody that there was amazing courage going on in that church. There were half a dozen people killed or thereabouts, and I understand there would have been more, except that the parishioners were throwing themselves in front of the children and protecting them. That is the greatest sacrifice any Christian-minded person could do, rather. So I'll throw that out at the end of the show here and say how wonderful it was, this horrific event. The courage and the love that were shown by these people is just absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. So may God bless them one and all. So if we don't have any other comments in the chat, we'll ask the odds if there anything else is new.
Yeah, we do. We have one more question for you.
Okay.
This is from This Too Shall Pass on YouTube. Does GMO food have an effect on the human body?
Okay. Let's clarify what kind of food that would be.
Genetically, what is that?
Altered.
Genetically modified. Is that what it stands for?
Yeah.
Yeah, genetically modified food.
There we go. My thought is that, The human body is absolutely amazing. Whatever you put in your stomach, there's a lot of acid inside of that tummy, and it breaks down everything that goes into it. And then the body selects to what it's going to assimilate and what it's going to reject. And so if things aren't good, they're going to be rejected. And so these modified foods probably, if their food value is zero or low, then it's going to be rejected. I don't think there's any harm in as much as that the genetic makeup of the food has been altered. In other words, it's poisonous or it's derogatory or it's disruptive. I don't think that happens when it's modified. It just, the cell structure, of what I'm looking at in my mind right now, the cell structure is different. It's made to be bigger or something that's maybe more difficult to digest. And so the worst case you would have on this is a little bit of digestion difficulty. And of course, it's up to everybody to select what food they eat. People who eat only organic, people are vegan, they're vegetarian, they're meat eaters, and their genetic makeup demands that kind of food. There are people who require to have good health to eat meat, and they're perfectly comfortable with that. And there are people who, through their society or their heritage, are vegetarians, true and true, and they are very healthy. The mistake that people make is crossing over, intellectually deciding what their body needs for nutrition or nourishment, and that doesn't work. And you see a lot of people on special healthy diets, but they're not well. It's because their genetic makeup, their heritage, if you will, says that yes, they ought to have fish. They ought to have some different kind of protein than what they're taking right now, as opposed to powder or some other source. And some people cannot digest dairy products. And some people can take dairy products if the lactose is taken out of them. So there people are lactose intolerant. So everybody's different. A long time ago, I met a man, I'm going to call him, he was a doctor, his name was Ray, and he was doing experiments on giving people mono meals. That means every meal, one food, one type of food. Onions for breakfast, apples for lunch, whatever. But I remember the onions for breakfast. He found that worked well for people. I'm not going to get into that, but anyway, that was back in the mid 70s. He was talking about that. And then the book came out, Eat Right for Your Blood Type, and I have nothing to do with that, but I'll give it a shout out. And that made more sense, that your blood type would dictate the type of diet you would have, whether it's a Mediterranean diet or whether it's a meat diet or a vegetarian diet, etc. I prefer myself a Mediterranean diet. Seems to be well-rounded, which has lots of vegetables and fish. That seems to fit me the best. But I didn't find out until I was an old man in my 60s that I used to love chocolate milk. The chocolate milk I was eating was giving me mucus and colds all the time. I even went to a doctor and got shots for it I was allergic to something. Nobody knew what it was. Well, it turns out lactose is not a good thing for me. So by experiment and by keeping track of your own health, if you eat certain kind of foods that makes you go to the washroom really quick, that's good to have in your mind. If you're having difficulty that way, eat those foods. You don't need to take laxatives. Or the other way around. If you're weak and you don't understand why, then look at, where did you come from? Did you come from the mountains in Europe, or did you come from Africa, or did you come from South America? Somebody once told me, was an engineer, that back in the day when polio was breaking out in the US and Canada, that people south of the border didn't have any polio cases. It was because of the hot peppers, the chili peppers that they were eating was killing off the virus, the polio virus in their gut. Well, fast forward to today, we have an understanding of leaky gut syndrome. That was pretty popular just a couple of years ago, and still it's relevant, and it's something to take into consideration if you're having digestive problems. Maybe you're having leaky gut syndrome. So, getting back to the point, I think that it's a choice of what kind of food you are going to put in your mouth, because what you put in your mouth, what you put through the gate, if you will, to your mouth, determines your health. It's not how much you eat, it's what you eat. And if you keep that rule of thumb, then you'll find out, when you eat something and you start having gas or burping, or you're having difficulty in digestion, don't eat that food. That's the problem. And again, going back to Dr. Ray, not his real name, but part of his name, uh, you can, by isolating and eating one food at a time, find out what is the best food for you and what food is not. And you can do that right away by eating something and say, "Oh, my tummy's, I'm bloated, I'm whatever, whatever." We get the point, my friends. So back to the point is I don't think that this genetically modified food is bad. It might not be as good as organic grown food. Okay, and somewhere in the middle is the rest of the food that we eat when farmers use fertilizers and pesticides. Organic food doesn't look pretty sometimes. It's got little pits in it. It's got the little, the worms have taken a bite out of it here and there, but it is genuinely organic. But it has the vitality of being natural. I mean, after all, as we were hunters and gatherers back in the day, we used to go around and pick the fruit off the trees. Watch out for Adam and Eve, but that's beside the point. That we would eat that fruit, and it would be wherever we were. If we went into a field and there were blueberries, our ancestors used to stuff themselves with blueberries until the blueberry patch was exhausted, and they'd move on down the road. And that's when they might find beans, or they would find pineapples on a tree or something like that. So, in a way, mono meals is the natural way to eat. But I can't see myself going to a fancy restaurant and saying, "Can I have a plate of olives, please?" you know, or I only want those brown beans. Okay, unless of course I met at my friend Raul's Chalio's restaurant in Fort Worth, best authentic Mexican food I've ever had in my life. Chalio's in Fort Worth. Give them a free shout out there. So you find out what your body operates under, what you digest, and how you feel stronger. When you eat food and you go to sleep or you feel weak, that means you've either had the wrong combination or the wrong food. So watch out. I mean, when I travel, I don't eat any kind of shellfish at all. Anything that grows on, anything that's a bottom crawler is something you should avoid in the oceans. Anything that doesn't have gills or fins, scales and fins, don't eat it. If it's a fish, it has scales and fins. I think that's the rule of thumb. I'm getting something mixed up. So anyway, that's an interesting question. It's a good one. But is there a danger in eating genetically modified food? I don't think so. Is it good for you? That's questionable. Should you eat it? That's your decision. But I don't think it's going to harm everyone. And if you're an advocate about eating the right diet or whatever, everybody has their free will and free choice. So encourage people to eat better in the simple way I've just brought up with these things that are popping in my mind intuitively as I'm talking. I hope that answers the question. Do we have another one, Jack?
I think that sums it up for this evening, Douglas.
Okay, again, a wonderful show. Thank you, Larry. You got last word?
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Douglas.
My pleasure. Everybody's here. We're happy that you are here. We ask you to subscribe and like our show and let people know we're here, because we're trying to put forward a show that's unique and that answers the questions you want to know. And so as we go to a close on the show tonight, remember, you're welcome here anytime. We'd love to hear from you from time to time. We have a website called thesoulreport.ca that we're developing, And we have a new feature that we're attempting to bring forward, which is going to be that you can call into the show. And as you do that, like Jonathan was on the phone tonight, we hope to be able to talk to you. We're looking for our friend Carol from Chicago, who used to be on our radio show all the time. So, again, my friends, we look forward to hearing from you. And we want to thank you for being on the show tonight, one and all. So, as we say goodnight, may God bless you. May you have peace and prosperity. Remember, it's harvest time coming up. This is the time to reap the benefits of all the work you've done this year. May God bless you and keep you. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. My co host is Larry Cruz. And the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, our producer is Jack Balick. We'll see you right here next week, but we might have a different time. We're thinking of going to a later show, and we'll let you know. So stay tuned, subscribe to the show, and we'll keep you in touch with our changes as we move forward and develop our show further. So good night, Larry. Take care. Well, good night, everybody.